I've been getting more irritated recently at my surroundings, primarily because of my job in retail and how people treat retail employees, but also just because life in general. I'm going to do one honorable mention and then we'll get into the 10 pet peeves of mine. The honorable mention, and I'm hoping this triggers people, is people who aren't wearing masks in public still in the US, even though we still have COVID going on. It's still killing people, and it's just a piece of fabric. It's not really that hard to put on. Anyway, on to the regular 10, starting with people who litter. Specifically, people who I'm driving behind who are just throwing garbage out their window. I'm not sure who of a failure of a parent raised them, but those parents did a terrible job. This also applies to people who just leave things lying around in parks, but especially people who are just throwing things out of their car window. Like, somebody has to clean that up eventually, and you're just being the dickwad that's making them have to do it. So you suck if you do that, and you should feel bad. The next up are people who are rude to employees, workers, people who are serving them. There's this saying that I always heard that I always really appreciated, where you can't look down on the people who are serving you if you want to get their services. People who make fun of like bartenders and waiters and cashiers whenever they need those people in order to attain the goods and services that they want to attain. I think it's really hypocritical to both bash the person who's serving you while also demanding their service. It's just an interesting thought, and I'm very irritated by it even to this day. The next one is people who sit next to you in an open area. A good example of this would be if you're in an empty bus and you're sitting like near the back by yourself and somebody sits like right across from you or right next to you or right behind you when there's all this bus around. It really applied today. I went to a place with my girlfriend, and there are open tables, and these people sat like right next to us, and they got mad at us whenever we were talking to each other as if we were disturbing them when they were actually disturbing us. The next one is people who don't cover their mouths whenever they cough or sneeze. Now, this always bothered me whenever I was growing up, but especially with COVID, it's really frustrating. People are just like full send sneezing like right in your direction, because that stuff goes pretty far. Or they're going through a huge hacking coughing fit because they've been vaping they're too hard, and then they're just like coughing all over you. It's just really irritating whenever that happens. People who want to one-up you constantly. You say you only got 3 hours of sleep, they say you only got an hour and a half. You say you spent 20 hours doing homework this week, they spent 40. You've been working for 40 hours, they've been working for 40 years this week. They always want to one-up and pretend like their lives are so much harder, and they want to always feel like they're more validated in their suffering than you are, and it gets really exhausting talking to these people. Next up is people who only believe that what they grew up with, the information that was given to them, is the only correct information. Examples of this in the US would be if you grew up Republican, you stay Republican, grew up religious, you stay religious, and you never actually consider other options throughout your life. I was very lucky to grow up with parents who were incredibly opposite, because it made me more of a, moderate centrist person. I look more towards the middle. I like to analyze both sides before I come to a decision. Whereas a lot of people, if they're born a certain way, they never really believe that, because they're brainwashed as kids to believe that, and they don't exercise any of their own free will to be able to actually go out and change. The next one is people who play music in public without wearing headphones, so they have their cell phone blasting that new DJ Khaled hit. And some people may really enjoy that music, but the majority of us just don't want to listen to it right now, and I don't understand why you do that. I will also give an honorable mention with this, with people who talk loudly on their cell phones, on speakerphones, so we can hear both sides of the conversation with somebody that we just don't care about. It's just really irritating when you're in the middle of, shopping, and all of a sudden you just hear somebody yelling, "Oh my god, dude, I know," and you look over and he's just like screaming at his phone, basically. I think it's really dumb. People who yell at their kids in public, and also, in private, but especially in public, like the kid is being a kid and being curious and asking questions, and the parents strung out and tired and start screaming at their kid for asking too many questions. It feels pretty bad. I'm not a parent. I'm technically not allowed to be able to judge, but I do think that's really irritating that that's your approach toward disciplining your kid, because that's how they're going to turn out later on in life, when they'll yell at their kid, and then it'll be an endless cycle. Next up, we have people who aren't paying attention to their surroundings. This is especially true when it comes to walking, and people don't move out of your way whenever you guys are walking directly at each other, or they're people that like bump into you, or like just constantly get in your way, or whatever it might be, because they're not looking at their surroundings. So instead of giving you the right of way if you're on the right side, if you're in the US, they'll just run directly into you because they're not paying attention. It can be really irritating, especially whenever they're staring at their cell phones or recording or doing a selfie, whatever they're doing, they're distracted. Finally, people who are openly homophobic. I would put racist, but as far as what I normally encounter in my day-to-day life, it's usually more homophobia. I have people that are constantly demeaning one of my coworkers who's very openly gay. There are a lot of people who will be very open about their just distaste towards people who are in the LGBT community, so I think that definitely caps off and tops off the list of people who I very much dislike, and I think it's hard to call it a pet peeve whenever I hate people like that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and do not forget to keep it casual.